Hello and welcome to my Game Week 5 transfer targets video. As per usual, I'll be looking at the best players to bring in this game week, plus I'll review some of the most popular players being transferred in and out and discuss whether managers are making a good decision with those moves. If you enjoyed the video, please remember to hit the like button and subscribe. Now let's get started. Let's begin with Ollie Watkins, who hit his first 2 goals of the season last week against Everton and is the most popular transfer in Game Week 5. Watkins started the midweek Champions League fixture away at Young Boys and once again was subbed off early around the 60-minute mark, very much in keeping with his Premier League minutes this season. We also saw pictures of him with ice on his ankle after he came off, but he's admitted to having a couple of niggling injuries this season to deal with, and I think that's just precautionary, and I fully expect him to start the match against Wolves this weekend. He still doesn't seem ready yet to play the full 90 minutes, which isn't as good as last season, so for a little longer we probably have to accept that he'll only be reaching the 60 to 70 minute mark. Most of Watkins' substitutions this season have seen him replaced by Jean Duran, who's hit 3 goals off the bench in 4 games and looks full of confidence, so I'm sure Unai Emery would like to give him some more game time too. This could mean him getting a start sometime soon, but that doesn't necessarily mean at the expense of Watkins. They could easily go with the front 2 and rotate elsewhere in the team, so I'm sure Watkins will get enough minutes to do well, as his stats are still brilliant with an expected goals of 0.93 per 90, and his next 5 fixtures are great. He's a perfectly reasonable transfer in this week, but I do wonder if maybe there might be better value options considering his relatively high price of 8.9 million. There are a few other forward options, and I particularly like Jamie Vardy at 5.7 million and Dominic Calvert-Lewin at 5.9. Despite being 37 now, Jamie Vardy has shown he's still got great goal-scoring instinct and I like him as an option. He's on penalties and he's proven that he's retained an impressive level of fitness as he's played the full 90 minutes in his last 2 matches against Palace and Villa and bagged 2 goals in his opening 4 games, 1 against Spurs and 1 against Palace. His expected goals of 0.4 per 90 is good for a player of his value and suggests he can continue this level of goal-scoring returns. I expect Vardy to be given a rest for the Carabao Cup fixture against Walsall between game weeks 5 and 6, and when he's fit he's going to keep playing, so I see him getting great minutes in his next fixtures, and Leicester have a great run starting now. Although Arsenal away in game week 6 is one you probably want to bench him for, and Forest at home is only okay. Everton, Southampton and Ipswich remain 3 of the worst defences in the league, with expected goals against of around 2.5 per 90, and Bournemouth in game week 7 are a team that concede chances too. So all in all, I think he's a pretty good option, and I can't really argue with the 200,000 plus managers who have transferred him in this week. Calvert-Lewin is in the same price bracket as Jamie Vardy, and of the 2, he is the one that I have a slight personal preference towards. He's on penalties too, and has also seen his minutes increasing from match to match this season, playing 87 in game week 3 and the full 90 last week against Villa. His expected goals of 0.31 isn't as good as Vardy, although his expected assists of 0.11 is better, so they're very similar in that respect, but maybe the fixtures for Everton are slightly better with no Arsenal match in game week 6. We've mentioned that Ipswich and Southampton are defences to target, along with Leicester, but Palace and Newcastle haven't been faring much better from a defensive perspective, and I'd happily play Calvert-Lewin in all these fixtures. He's also looked good in the eye test, leading the line well for Everton, showing great hold-up strength and getting good chances in a team that do create some, even if they concede more. Calvert-Lewin is yellow flagged at the moment due to him having an illness and being unable to play the Carabao Cup match on Tuesday. I'm not sure if he would have played anyway. He may well have been given a rest, as Everton rotated quite a few players that game. But Sean Dyche has already come out and said he hopes to have the players who are ill on Tuesday back for game week 5. I'll be looking to hear the press conferences at the end of this week for any further news, but it sounds promising, and I think it's highly likely Calvert-Lewin plays, so he could well be in a transfer I'm making this week. Sticking with Everton, Dwight McNeil has had a big increase in attacking returns in the past 2 games weeks with a goal and 2 assists. Currently playing the number 10 role, McNeil has relished being the creative spark in the Everton team and has a brilliant 0.6 expected assists this season, second only to Cole Palmer for midfielders and at a fraction of the price. He's created 5 big chances so far this season, which is the most in the league. He's top for total chances created too. He plays 90 minutes every week, and we've seen how great Everton's fixture run is now, so only 1.4% owned. He could be a great differential. I really like him and thoroughly recommend this transfer in. I'm considering getting him myself, but with 2 Everton players already, I can only get one of him and Calvert-Lewin without taking a hit, and for the moment, Calvert-Lewin does seem to fit into my team strategy slightly the better. One player also worth a quick look is Dominic Solanke. He's returned to the Spurs team after a couple of weeks out injured, and as their number 9, he looks set to get great minutes. His stats aren't the best yet, with only 0.26 expected goals per 90. But we saw how well he could do with Bournemouth last season, notching 19 Premier League goals, and that's for a team who weren't the most attacking in the league. The Spurs of last season, on the other hand, were an attacking force to be reckoned with, but they haven't really clicked yet this season, or shown anything like the same attacking threat, so I wouldn't be looking at bringing in Solanke yet, but he's definitely one to keep an eye on, and if all the Spurs attacking players start to gel again, then at 7.5 million he could become a real bargain. Moving on, there's a few forwards who we might be looking to move on from our team in the near future, none more so than Rodrigo Muniz of Fulham. Having been dropped last weekend for Fulham's match against West Ham, he then played the midweek Carabao Cup fixture against Preston and looks to have been relegated to the Fulham B team, as it were. With Raul Jimenez, Muniz's replacement in the Premier League, scoring on his first start, I can't see him being dropped for the next game. And with Fulham's fixtures looking much trickier now than in the first 4 weeks, with Newcastle, Forest, City and Villa up next, there is no reason to hold on to Muniz, and I'd be looking to transfer him out as soon as possible. João Pedro also missed Brighton's fixture with Ipswich at home last week, with a knock he picked up on international duty, and he wasn't fit enough to make the squad for the midweek Carabao Cup fixture against Wolves on Wednesday either. We have been told that he did make a training session on the Wednesday, and that might be a decent sign of him being ready for the weekend's match against Forest, which is a reasonable fixture for him, but in truth, this isn't enough information to guarantee that he starts. With Brighton's run of fixtures looking pretty awful for the next 6 weeks, including away trips to Chelsea, Newcastle and Liverpool, I would be looking to move him on as soon as possible too, especially with the great options of Calvert-Lewin and Vardy to go to at the moment. Alexander Isak is a little more complicated, but still a player I might look to jump off this week. He came off at half-time against Wolves last week with an eye injury, which nobody expected to keep him out of the following match, but as of yet, we're not aware that he's been able to take part in training this week with Newcastle at all. Isak is a hugely important player in the Newcastle attack, especially with Callum Wilson sidelined with injury, so I'm sure Eddie Howe will be keen to play him if possible, so I still believe there's a decent chance he plays against Fulham. Newcastle's fixtures are also taking a turn for the worse over the next 6 weeks. In addition to that, Newcastle's attacking stats are nothing like the level they were at last season, currently only 1.35 goals expected per 90 minutes, so they're not creating the chances as regularly as we are used to. So maybe now is the time to move Isak on. The same could be said of Anthony Gordon, although I would personally be giving him 1 more week before transferring him out. His XG of 0.22 and XA of 0.44. That's wrong. The same could be said of Anthony Gordon, although I would personally be giving him 1 more week before transferring him out. His XG of 0.22 and XA of 0.24 is not bad, and he's looked to be Newcastle's most threatening player this season. Plus, he's guaranteed to start the match against Fulham in game week 5, possibly even in the number 9 role if Isak isn't able to play. So I wouldn't take him out before that. The fixture swing afterwards, though, would make me look to replace him by game week 6, especially knowing that Arsenal and Brentford start on a particularly good run. Talking of Brentford, Brian Mbeumo has been popular this week with managers so far, with over 100,000 new owners. He started the season well with 3 goals in his first 4 matches, plus he's on penalties for Brentford and plays 90 minutes every week. His expected goals of 0.28 per 90 and expected assists of 0.32 are great for a player at 7.1 million, and although he's not my top priority as a transfer in this week, I'm very much considering buying him in the near future. Game week 5 isn't the best fixture away at Spurs, you see, whose defensive numbers of only 1.10 expected goals against this season are better than they are being given credit for, and I would be waiting at least another week before bringing him in unless you have a midfielder you are desperate to get rid of this week. We're not quite sure exactly what Brentford's lineup will be in attack either, as Johan Wissa picked up an ankle injury last week against Manchester City and will be out for a couple of months. His most likely replacement seems to be Kevin Schade, who could represent great value as a 5.4 million midfielder playing as a forward. His expected goals this season of 0.16 per 90 isn't exceptional, but playing more centrally would potentially help that. I'd definitely be waiting to see how Brentford set up at Spurs this week, and to see how the loss of Wissa affects how productive their attack is before considering transferring Sharda in, but he could be another who might turn out to be a bargain in a week or two. Luis Diaz continues to be heavily transferred in, and being in my team already is definitely a player I'm happy to have this week. Arne Slot did come out and say he intended to start Cody Gakpo in the Forest match, but on their return from international duty, he changed his mind as Luis Diaz was the fitter of the two. Now, I actually see this as a good thing for Diaz, as we see every week how much energy he puts into a game and how sharp he looks in attacking areas, and it seems good that his manager recognised just how fit he was, even if it took him by surprise. The fixture run for Liverpool remains good too, although the trickier fixtures are coming on the horizon now, so if I was bringing him in, this might be the last week I would think about doing that. His stats remain excellent, despite blanking last week against Forest, with an XG of 0.64 and an XA of 0.19, and he only played 20 minutes in the midweek Champions League fixture against Milan, so he got a good rest and should be fit and ready for the Bournemouth at home. I'd predict a return in this game for him. Emil Smith-Rowe has also seen a lot of transfers in this week, but he's actually a player I'm considering transferring out of my team this week. He's done really well in the 4 weeks I've owned him, with a goal against Leicester and an assist last week against West Ham. Plus, his expected goals of 0.3 and expected assists of 0.23 are really good for a 5.7 million player. But Fulham's fixtures really take a nosedive over the next 4 weeks. Newcastle, Forest, City and Villa is a pretty tough run to say the least, and I can't see Fulham scoring many goals during that period. I don't think he's an essential sell at only 5.7 million, and you may well be able to bench him in some of the tougher fixtures. But now might just be the right time to jump off, especially with players like Dwight McNeil and Morgan Rogers as options. Finally, I think we should take a look at the Forest defence and some of the options that are available. Forest demonstrated their defensive qualities again last week away at Anfield, and with expected goals against of 1.06 per 90 minutes have continued to look excellent again this season. I'm not sure Game Week 5 away at Brighton is the best time to be transferring in a defender, but home games against Fulham, Palace and West Ham, plus Leicester away in the next 6 are really good. Also, their defenders all come in at 4.4 or 4.5 million, which is really cheap, and certainly cheap enough to rotate when necessary. I already own Aina, who has had nearly 150,000 transfers in this week, who isn't particularly attacking with expected assists of 0.06, but he did get the occasional attacking return last season, and at 4.4 million, you're not looking for too much. Alex Moreno has come in on loan from Aston Villa this season, and looks to be playing in the other fullback position. And although he offered very little going forward in his first game against Liverpool, in the previous season at Aston Villa, he offered a significantly greater threat when he played, and I imagine that he'll do that again this season, more so than Aina. He is potentially more of a rotation risk, though, with Nico Williams around as a backup. I would look to watch him and Forest for a couple of weeks before considering making a move. That's all for now. I hope you found this video helpful, and always, please hit the like button and subscribe if you enjoyed it. See you for the next one.